Okay, now the revision of prevention of oppression and mismanagement. We have very few sections read with rules and some case laws in this particular chapter. This chapter comprises of not many sections starting from section number 241 till section number 246. If we look at the chapter overview, if oppression and mismanagement is taking place in any company and if you're being oppressed in the capacity as a member, that is a continuous act of oppression that you're suffering from, then if you happen to be the eligible member, then you can make an application to tribunal for seeking relief from that oppression or mismanagement. This chapter intends to provide the preventive remedy and not the exact cure after an oppression has taken place. So oppression and mismanagement, these are the two terms which are not defined in the act, defined in this whole chapter. However, when we look at section number 241, we are being given two cases when an application may be made. So, if you satisfy the criteria, if you fall into those cases and you meet the eligibility requirement, then you can make an application. So, when we start with the chapter, we start with understanding the meaning of the two terms. There are two perspectives. One is the general meaning that we understand of the two terms, and second is the given intended meaning, the given intended precise meaning in the section which we have to present in our answers, right? So, first thing, the very first thing, the chapter begins with a rule, that is majority rule, Foss versus Harbottle, which states that all the decisions will be taken by majority, which is fair enough. Because if we remove this particular rule, we will not have any proper procedure to take decisions in a company, in our lives, in anywhere, right? So, obviously, if the decisions are to be taken by board of directors or the members, they are going to be taken by majority of people, which is the majority rule, which is nothing wrong at all, and the courts will not intervene in this internal management as long as the decisions are being taken in the manner they ought to be. However, this chapter says something as an exception to this Foss versus Harbottle majority rule, and it states that sometimes the decisions being taken by this majority could be oppressive, could be creating some atrocities to the minority group, to some group of members, to one member, two member, four member, five member. And in such a situation courts will intervene. How the courts will intervene? NCLT gets the power under this chapter to entertain such applications and complaints. Right? This is the slight background that I have given to you. Since just a revision class, we're not going to get into very much in-depth meaning of each and every term. Once again, if we come back to the chapter overview, someone is entitled to make an application under section 241. Who is entitled? The members eligibility criteria or requirement is given under section 244. So before reading section 241, you need to have that understanding of section 244 and remember who is eligible to make an application. So someone who is eligible to make an application, if the circumstances prevail which are given in section 241. What are the circumstances? There are two cases which are given. One case is termed as oppression and one as mismanagement. Although section does not define the terms, section only states the circumstances we believe it to be the case of oppression or mismanagement, right? So if the members are eligible, they can make an application. If there are the circumstances prevalent, they can make an application to tribunal under section 241. Tribunal passes certain orders under section 242, and out of those orders, a few orders have certain consequences also, some after effects. That is given in section 243, and we have a separate segment, class action suits given under section 245, and 246 is absolutely nothing, right? You are not being asked any question. It is nothing. It's just about the applicability of some part. So that we are not concerned with. We start with the revision of first section 241, but before that, let's have a look at who is eligible to make an application. There might be a company with share capital, there might be a company without share capital. If it is a company without share capital, we don't have any share capital, we just have the number of members. So we can straight away say 1/5 of the total number of members. So if the company is without share capital, 1/5 of the total number of members. But if the company is with share capital, then ideally we have three things, and we can say lowest of all these three, or we can have a division that number wise also criteria could be met, or the value wise criteria could also be met. A company is having share capital. Who are the members who are eligible to make an application? Lowest of either 100 members or 1/10 of the total number of members, or the members who are holding at least 1/10 of the issued share capital. Here it means preference plus equity both. Point number one. Secondly, it's not paid up capital, it's issued capital. So you have to keep this thing in mind. So if you meet any of these three criteria, you become eligible to make an application. However, what is important is that you must have paid all the calls and sums due to the company. If you yourself have failed to pay the calls of the company, then your eligibility requirement also fails, and in that case you are not an eligible applicant. Moreover, sometimes it may so happen that although you fail to meet the eligibility requirement, yet your case is severe and your application is genuine, and you must make an application for seeking relief. In such a situation, tribunal can waive the requirements. Tribunal can say, fine, even if you're not 1/10 of members, you can still make an application. Even if you don't hold 1/10 of issued share capital, you still make an application and we will admit your petition. Right? So this is something which is possible. NCLT may permit the lesser number of members. That is something which is something that I have told you. Now, although these points are established through a lot of case laws as well, but two things I am telling you over here. One, I hold 100 shares and so I am eligible. After making an application, I sell my 50 shares. So my shareholding gets reduced. Later on, after making an application, will my application be still valid? The answer is yes. So I am supposed to hold the requisite number of shares only at the time of filing application and not thereafter. Secondly, I have given my consent, but subsequently I have withdrawn my consent. Will my application be still valid? The answer is yes. Right? So both these requirements, that is the shareholding as well as the consent, is needed only at the time of filing of application and not thereafter. Thereafter, if it is subsequently reduced or withdrawn, it doesn't really matter. So one thing is clear, who is eligible to make an application? So we check whether the company is with share capital, without share capital, where do you fall, and do you meet the criteria as given or not. If you meet the criteria, then you may complain. If oppression takes place or if mismanagement takes place, or likely to take place, right, because it is a preventive remedy. So one, if the affairs of the company have been conducted or are being conducted prejudicial to public interest. What do you mean by prejudicial? Prejudicial is harmful. So if it is harmful for public, it is harmful or oppressive to the members, it is harmful to the interest of the company. So if any of these things exist and you are eligible member, then you may complain. Secondly, there is some change in the management, or even without the change also this takes place. However, what is being given in the section, if there is change in the management, and now it is expected that whatever actions they are going to do, it will prejudice us. Why change in the management is written over here? Because if there is no change, then affairs are being conducted in a harmful manner. So if there is no change, this point covers it all. But if recently some board of directors have changed, or maybe the two companies have come together, or maybe some shares have been acquired by a particular group, so that ownership in shares have been changed, so now whatever resolution will be passed, they will have the majority and they will be taking the decisions. So if there is some change, if there is no change, either the affairs will be running good or not good. Not good, you can use this ground and you can complain. If there is change in management, then you come to this particular point, right? So there is change in the management, you are expecting that it will be harmful to members, so you have proper circumstances and evidence which suggests the same, then you may also complain. And CG in public interest can also complain, so you can make an application to tribunal. And if tribunal is satisfied that yes, the allegation, the application is genuine and the above affairs exist, above state of affairs exist, and and the company is in such a condition that the company must be wound up. But if we go on to wind up the company, it will not be fair for the members who have made the application. Right? Something wrong has happened to me, and you're closing down the company. It doesn't rectify what wrong has happened to me. Right? So in such a situation, tribunal, instead of resorting to winding up, takes some other actions. What are the other actions? This part is given in section 242. So these are the orders of tribunal, what orders may be passed, although tribunal can pass any order as they deem fit. However, there is some list of orders which are given which may be passed, right? So what orders can be passed? The tribunal can say that we are going to regulate the affairs. Fair enough. The tribunal could say regarding the purchase of shares by some group or by the company. The tribunal can instruct the company that, okay, fine, you buy the shares of these people at a fair price. And since you're buying back the shares, it should result in, or it should comply with all the provisions of reduction of share capital. Right? Sometimes it may so happen that some transfer of shares is constantly taking place, which is not in the best interest of the company, and all the shares are being rerouted to a group of shareholders who are misusing their powers or something like that. So tribunal can restrict that transfer. Some further shares are being issued, and if these shares are issued to a particular group of people, they will become majority from minority. Tribunal can stop that allotment. Now, tribunal can terminate, set aside, modify the agreement between directors and company, or between company and some third party. If tribunal does this, it has consequences of 243. Only in this point. Only in this point we have consequences. For all other points, we don't have consequences. What do you mean by that, ma'am? Company has hired, or company has appointed Mr. X as the managing director for 5 years, but tribunal terminated their contract and said that you have to leave the company. Right? In such a situation, two consequences follow, which are given in section 243. One, although if a managing director is removed before expiry of his term and he fulfills the conditions given in section 202, he is entitled to compensation. However, if he is removed under section 242 by tribunal, he will not be entitled to compensation. Moreover, because tribunal has found him guilty and that's why has removed him, so he will be disqualified for 5 years. If he wants to be appointed as a director before 5 years, then he has to go to tribunal, seek its permission, and then it can be appointed. Okay. Likewise, although third party and company, tribunal doesn't have the right to terminate a contract of third party and company, right? But still, here tribunal gets that power. Tribunal will discuss with the third party, will take permission from the third party, and then terminate, set aside, or modify the agreement with the third party. However, even in that situation, the third party also shall not be entitled to any compensation. So, no matter if tribunal has terminated or set aside or modified the contract, then absolutely no compensation, and the concerned directors will be disqualified for 5 years of appointment until they seek the permission from tribunal. Next, setting aside a fraudulent preference. For this, you need to recall and understand what do you mean by fraudulent preference. Giving someone preference for a fraudulent motive or intention. That is fraudulent preference. Like what, ma'am? I have 10 creditors, and if I have to genuinely make payment of these 10 creditors, I will pay the creditor who has been waiting for the longest, right? But instead of making that particular payment, I paid to some creditor who I know is a good friend of mine. So this is giving fraudulent preference to that creditor just because I know that the company is running out of funds, and if I start in that sequence, my friend will not get money. But that's how it should happen. That's a fair play, right? But instead of going for that fair play, here we are involving some fraudulent motive and doing this. Tribunal has the power that in the past, if these type of transactions have taken place, they can set aside this transaction. Tribunal can remove MD, manager, director, appoint them who is going to report to NCLT. They can give instructions about the cost of this and recovery and other matters as they deem fit. So these are the orders which may be passed by tribunal. An application may be given by the eligible members to tribunal. Tribunal receipt of application is satisfied that yes, it exists and winding up would be unfair. Then tribunal passes certain orders. Whatever order is passed, that has to be furnished to ROC within 30 days. Within 30 days. Okay. Now, we have another point over here on which we have not done a lot of questions because these are some recent amended sections which have been incorporated and a new thing which has been incorporated. But then this is important. Okay, so there is something more. What is it? Application to tribunal for relief in case of oppression, etc. And powers of tribunal and section 243. Ma'am, we have read section 241, we have read section 242, we have read even section 243. Then what is it? It is a combination of all three of them. It is an absolutely different topic, but it is not given in one section. Some part of it is given in section 241, some in 242, and some in 243. Okay, so let's begin from the very first part. See, if central government on the basis of some circumstances has a belief that there is a director in the company who is not fit enough to be the director. Fit enough means he is constantly negligent in his duties, he's not performing his duties well, or maybe he's constantly indulged in fraud, right? Some people are there who do mistakes, but some people are there who have a habit of doing mistakes, right? So if central government comes across any such person who is guilty of fraud or breach, or has not done the business according to the principles, or has been doing the business with the intent to defraud or cause injury, then CG wants to know, is he fit enough? CG wants to know, is he fit enough? So CG initiates a case and makes an application to tribunal. Now, tribunal should also have the confidence that do I really need to inquire about this person? So for that, CG gives a concise statement that why CG believes that yes, some inquiry should take place for this person. I don't find this person to be fit and proper. I don't find him to be fit enough to be the director. Right. So central government gives the application to tribunal to inquire and record whether or not such person is fit and proper to hold office. Under section 242, tribunal records its decision. So tribunal will hear the case, will call him, will look for evidences and all that, and finally come to a conclusion that yes, he is fit, or no, he is not fit. Right. So whatever conclusion he comes across, he records that decision under section 242. And if he is fit, great enough. If he is not fit, then such person shall not hold office for 5 years from the said decision without the leave of tribunal. So if he wants to be appointed, he can take permission of tribunal, and such person shall not be entitled to compensation. Just the same thing that we have read before also. I have made another chart for you all in the same capacity so that you understand the whole for the same topic, so that you understand the whole concept well once again. Central government, if these circumstances suggest fraud, negligence, or default, not sound business principles, or serious injury to trade or industry, or intent to defraud, then it can make an application to NCLT to inquire along with concise statement. This part is given in section number 241. After hearing, NCLT shall pass order. This is given in section 242(4)(a). If he is fit, no further action needed. If he is not fit, then these three parts are given over here. Such person shall be removed, disqualified for 5 years in any company. If tribunal terminates or sets aside some agreement with the director, he is disqualified to be appointed for 5 years only in that company. But if tribunal finds that a person is not fit enough, then he is disqualified for 5 years to hold office in any company. That's the difference. And also entitled to compensation for that loss, right? So you get double clarity this way, right? So I think this is clear. Okay, now we probably have this last section that we need to discuss. Class action. Class action is a benefit which has been given, and this benefit is not just for the members but also for the depositors. I have made you a proper differentiate between section 241, section 245, that there also some members are coming together and making an application. Here also members are coming together and making an application. So what is the difference? All that difference I've already told you. Right now we'll focus just on revising our concepts, right? So members can also go for class action, and depositors can also go for class action. If members, we are talking about members, the company may be with share capital, without share capital. If it is with share capital, the lowest of 100 members, 5% of number of members, or if it is a listed company, members holding 2% of share capital. If it is unlisted company, members holding 5% of share capital. Fine. If the company is without share capital, 1/5 of the number of members. You have to learn it. If you don't learn it, no, you will think and try to uh, focus that what is ma'am trying to tell us. I'm unable to gain this, I'm unable to retain this. So you will face a lot of problems if you don't learn. Wherever in law there is a limit, my dear, you have no choice but to learn, right? Other than these numbers and limits, all that concept building helps you to retain the concepts throughout, but this learning part has to happen. Okay. And if it is depositors, exactly the same thing. 100 depositors, 5% of depositors in terms of number, or the depositors who owes 5% of total deposits. So this is in terms of value and this is in terms of number. Fine. Now, if you are eligible, you can make an application. On what ground? That management of affairs are being conducted in a prejudicial manner. Tribunal will consider the factors. Tribunal might admit your application or it might reject the application. Right? You are making an application to seek these specified remedies which may be granted to you. There is an option at the end, other remedy as well, which is a leftover option. Now, before this, what is the procedure of class action? In the procedure of class action, once tribunal receives an application, tribunal gives a public notice. Public notice as in we have received a class action application. Now all the members are being given a public notice. There might be some members who want to opt out from this, they can. But if they don't want to opt out, they are deemed to be a part of this class action application, right? Maybe there might be a situation that two class applications have been filed in the same regard, so they will be clubbed into one and one lead applicant will be selected. Now, it is the choice of the applicants only to select one lead applicant. However, if there is a conflict between these applicants, then tribunal can take a call and tribunal can decide about the lead applicant, which is going to be binding on everyone. Fine. So, what orders or what types of remedies can be obtained under this section? The company can be stopped from doing an ultra vires act, from committing some breach, and some resolution can be declared as void. A resolution for altering a particular regulation of articles of association was passed, but there was some problem which we have discussed in classes, so that can be rendered as void by the tribunal. Restraining company to act on above resolution. Since the above resolution has been rendered to be void, then obviously you will not even act on that resolution. If that resolution was valid, you will take its actions. But if it is not valid, then you will stop yourself. You will not go ahead. Right? Is stopping the company to act in contrary to the provisions. You can claim damages from the director, auditor, expert, others, and any other remedy which may be granted, right? So these are the different types of reliefs or remedies which may be given under a class action suit. Fine, so that was super quick revision of the chapter of prevention of oppression and mismanagement.